Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Table. I am JM. This is a show where we hang out and we talk with game creators, game designers, artists, people who are in the gaming industry and hear their stories and kind of share their stories. And one of the focuses of my channel is on things of beauty and things of beauty in the gaming industry. And it is my great honor to have the Swordfish Islands guys, Donnie and Jacob. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show because Hot Springs Island is a thing. It's a thing of beauty, and it's just so inspirational. And I got to meet you guys at North Texas RPG Con, and here we are hanging out and chatting about your game company.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So before we get into Hot Springs Island and the Tomb of Black Sand and all these other things that you have going on, how did you guys meet? How did you guys get into gaming? Why did you decide to, create Swordfish Islands?
Um, let's see where to start in the story. So I guess the first time that I played Dungeons and Dragons was in fifth grade at a sleepover, and my buddy's uncle ran it for a bunch of us, and I had a great time. It was wonderful. We started in a tavern. I played a thief. There was a bar fight. I had my thief jump up on the bar to try and get the cash box while everybody was distracted. And I discovered that 1d4 points of damage was like nothing. And I loved it. I mean, it was fantastic. And so I played D&D, for quite a while. And then I got a job at Blizzard when they moved out to Texas a long time ago, 2007. I was one of the first Texans, I guess, that got hired for their customer service stuff. And I was working out there, and then I met Evan, who is another one of our team members who's not on today, but he moved out from California.
Can I interrupt you, Jacob?
Yeah,
I
go for it.
apologize.
Sure.
My in my attempt to get going, I did not have the right setup, so I got to do my intro again
Oh, no worries.
because they could not hear you.
Oh
Okay.
no.
So, well, actually, they heard my side. So if you want to just start your story over again, I apologize for that. I'll get the volume turned up. Thanks for pointing that out.
No, it's all good. So let's see. Getting into Dungeons and Dragons, the first time that can they hear me now?
Yes.
Am I? Okay, perfect. All right. So the first time I played was in fifth grade. I was at my best friend's house. He had a sleepover. His uncle ran a game for like 8 of us, 9 of us. There were a lot of us that were playing. I made a thief. We were in a tavern. There was a bar fight, of course. I jumped up on the tavern, on the bar to try and get the cash box while all of this distraction was going on, and quickly found out that 1d4 points of damage with a dagger is like nothing. But I totally fell in love with the game after that point, and so played it, quite a bit. Then fast forward a bit into how Swordfish Islands started. So I got hired as one of the first people from Texas to work at Blizzard Entertainment when they opened up their customer service center out in Austin, which is now gone. So, but yeah, so I was there, and then I met Evan, who is another one of the Swordfish Islands co-creators, and Evan had moved out from California, and so we hit it off, and then at one point, then Donnie showed up, and because Donnie is friends with Evan, and so the thing with Swordfish Islands, I guess, was that in 2011, Kickstarter was kind of ascendant, and so I was seeing what was happening on Kickstarter, and I was there, looking at these things, saying, "Well, this is." I felt that there were these projects that were making a ton of money, and we're talking like $5,000, $10,000, 2011. I'm like, wow, they have nothing of substance there, but they're pulling all this stuff in. I was like, guys, we can do this too. Let's try it. But since nobody knows who we are, we need to finish our stuff first, and then we'll go to Kickstarter to get the print run done and go from there. And so that was kind of how that happened. And the Swordfish Islands, the name came about because it was a place in one of Donnie's campaigns, because Donnie's one of the best dungeon masters you've ever played with, or ever. He's great. And so he had this map We met at a pizza place, Evan and Donnie and I, and he brought this map and we were looking at, their campaign world and stuff. And there was a little spot that said the Swordfish Islands. And I was like, what is that? That's the best name I've ever heard. And so with that, I will say, Donnie, so how did you start playing? Like, what made you make the Swordfish Islands? Give us,
Well, the Swordfish Islands name, I honestly I can't remember where it came from because Evan had drawn a map and he and I and another friend of ours had kind of just created a small homebrew of this continent that we had been running games on, and we've been running games there for almost 30 years. And so but my original start was in D&D. To go back a little bit further, was 94. A friend of mine, was my freshman year in high school, and a friend of mine introduced me to D&D. One weekend I went over to his house to hang out, and he was like, "Hey, I got this game, you should try it out." And I'm like, "Okay, so what is it?" And he's like, "Oh, it's this game." And so I start looking at it, I'm looking at the pictures, and I'm like, "Okay, well, what do we do?" He showed me how to make a character. I made a bard, and I was like, "I want to be like a con artist guy. I want to try and like trick people and like take their money." And he's like, "Okay, you start off in jail." And I'm like, "Okay." And so I was sent into this large arena, and in the center of this arena was this large pillar, and we were supposed to climb the pillar to get to the top. And if you got to the top, you got your freedom. And of course, there's me and like, 8 other NPCs that are running around. And so I start climbing, and then on my third attempt to make my climb check, my heel was grabbed by one of the other guys, and I was tossed to the ground, and I fell about 20 feet. And being a bard with 4 hit points, it's just funny that you said you had 4 hit points because I also had 4 hit points, and I did not make it because I took like 8 points of damage. So I was dead, and but it was fun, and I wanted to do it again, and it just kind of steamrolled from there. I played throughout high school, I played in college, and after college, playing, and then to kind of move things a little bit forward, in 2010, I moved out to Texas. Was friends with Evan, and still are friends. Still am friends with Evan, but he introduced me to Jacob because Jacob had an idea. He wanted to create like a mega dungeon. And so we went to Brooklyn Heights Pizza. He talked about what it was. And immediately as he's talking about it, just the creative part just starts happening. And it's like, oh, what about this? Or what about that? What about this? And he was asking about our stuff. I showed him the map. He's like, "What's this name?" And I was like, "It's just a place." Like, I hadn't really like built it out yet because no one had gone there. So I
Wait,
didn't need to build it out. It was just there. It was,
mm,
and somebody's like, "I love that name." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "I want to use it." Okay. Like, I didn't think much of it at the time, but
mhm.
it's been really good. A lot of people like it. And so it just became this thing that where we started kind of just, we got together once a week to work on the Swordfish Islands. And it was Evan, Jacob, and I were in the room writing stuff, coming up with ideas, yelling back and forth. And then Gabe, our artist, was there just listening to us and occasionally drawing what we were talking about. And yeah, that's how it came to be. So very cool. Yeah, Blizzard was great in that it allowed you to kind of like be creative and stuff. And so, I mean, without that, we wouldn't have met. So yeah.
I've heard that D&D is um, and that kind of role playing creativity is very welcomed in the Blizzard video game kind of arenas.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I want to talk about. I first heard of you guys. My friend Ben was like, "JM, you're running a bunch of. I still run Second Edition D&D. I run Adventurer Conqueror King. I run a lot of like Hyperborea. I like the old school feel when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons." And he was like, "Hey, you got it? Have you heard of Hot Springs Island?" And I'm like, "No. Why would I like? What is it? Why would I be at all interested in this?" And he sent me the link to your Kickstarter, and so I got the original. One of the first
OG.
printings with the sweet embossed cover, the dark of Hot Springs Island. It was two things. I got the dark of Hot Springs Island, and then you had the field guide to Hot Springs Island, which
Mhm.
immediately grabbed me. Like the fact that, hey, here's so it's an in-world artifact that I can hand to my players and say, hey, a bunch of people have died here, but they took notes.
Mm.
Where did this idea come from? The art is beautiful throughout. What made you guys want to do this weird hex crawl and all of these I mean, especially like the field guide to Hot Springs Island was the big sell for me because I love in-world artifacts.
Mhm. Um, I mean, I think for me, like Donnie said, when we first got together and we're talking, it was like, hey, let's make a mega dungeon.
Yeah.
But I really like overland travel, but I like the overworld and exploration there, but I've always felt that I was like terrible at running overland travel because it's oftentimes something that just gets hand waved. Like because you guys start out in this point and you want to get all the way over here to the dungeon. Well, we're just gonna get you to the dungeon and like boom, fade to black and go. And I've never liked, I mean, it's okay. But I wanted to try and address what I felt were sort of like my failings with running overworld stuff. So I was like, well, let's make an overworld and let's do the islands because each island should theoretically be self-contained, right? And the goal when we started was that we were going to have a box, and inside of each box there were going to be little booklet zines, one for each island, and that was going to be that. And then obviously that didn't happen. Um, but it got bigger. We have a scope creep problem consistently. Um,
I mean,
but
you put out a 25 hex arena
yeah,
for players to go through, and each hex is just chocked full with creativity and imagination and just.
there's 3 locations in each of those hexes. They're
Mhm.
2-mile hexes. So that was the thing that I wanted to do too, was like go for density, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, I played Skyrim, I played Daggerfall, I played Morrowind, and those locations in those Bethesda games and stuff are very dense with like
Mhm.
stuff. It's not that big of an area when you look at it, and a lot of traditional hex maps. They have like a 6-mile hex, and a 6-mile hex is a huge amount of land,
Yeah.
right? And it can incorporate like all of New York City and stuff. And you're telling me that the only thing in this entire 6 miles of forest is like a gnome sitting on a stump playing a flute who asks you a riddle, and that's the only thing that's there ever, and then you move on. Like, no, I don't want to do a hex crawl like that. So I mean, part of it was just kind of like I don't know, sort of a personal challenge of like, this is what I want to do. And the plan was, since there are multiple of us that have been kind of building this collaboratively, and like Donnie said, we're yelling at each other. That's just part of the process. But part of it too is that we each needed to come up with our own sort of like storyline that goes on in there.
Yeah.
Not necessarily each take an island, but I was like, well, we're doing a tropical. It's tropical islands. That means there must be a volcanic island, and of course that means there must be somebody living in the
Oh,
volcano,
yes.
because that is the way that things are. So I was like, I really want to do that. And then Donnie has like you've got the book, like the spell book that's been broken into multiple
Mm-hmm.
pieces and kind of scattered around, which is great. And then Evan is the adder, right? Like there's like a pirate captain, because of course there's a pirate captain who's cursed and everything, and so
Yeah.
that's kind of his thing. So we've each been kind of working on those pieces. um but like one of the things too is that as we got together, because like Donnie said, we would get together once a week, but instead of getting together once a week in like gaming, we were getting together once a week in world building, is
That's
essentially what it
awesome.
was. But it was basically like a game session, and it was really great. So maybe we really are story gamers and we're not OSR people when you get down to it. But
I don't know. Having read this is very much.
um but yeah, but we built it, and then the thing was, is like it was growing and growing and growing, and so I was like, guys, we have to do one. Just we need to pick an island, like pick one of these islands. It doesn't matter which one, and we need to finish that island, and that's what we'll take to Kickstarter, because like we have so much stuff that I think that we could do one and it would still be strong enough to like stand on its own.
Yeah.
What does that look like? And we decided to go with Hot Springs Island. Um, and then the field guide was also sort of addressing like a personal problem for me, which is there's a few different levels. Um, one of them is sort of the challenge of like, how do you monetize RPGs in the first place, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you have 6 people. So we're working at Blizzard, we're doing customer support for the World of Warcraft, every single person that was playing World of Warcraft bought the game and then paid $15 a month as a subscription. So then they were able to open up a customer service center in Austin, and they were able to do this and they were able to do that because they had a constant influx of money.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't happen with a role-playing game where you have 6 people who are sitting around a table and literally only one person is allowed to buy the content. Because if you're running second edition and you go out and you buy Ravenloft and you read Ravenloft, well, now you're the dungeon master because you ruined everything for
That's
yourself.
right. Exactly.
Like you can't, you know what the weaknesses are, you know where the secret doors are. You by paying for the game and supporting the creators, you've ruined the game for yourself,
Yeah,
and
you
you
have to be
the
the dungeon
DM.
master. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, something similar may have happened to me, at some point in my life, right? Where then it's like, oh, well, I have to be the one that runs because I bought the manual, and I wasn't intending for that to happen, but that's what happened. And so the field guide kind of grew out of that as like, well, what can you sell to players that's not rules and character classes and customization? Because I don't like rule systems. I'm not a fan of them. So that was one of my driving things, is like, well, what does that mean and what does that look like? And so then I think it all works very perfectly with a sandbox, because sandboxes are naturally, they have to be player driven.
Mm-hmm.
Like the players have to say, like, I want to walk over to that mountain and see what's there.
Yeah.
And if they don't ever do that, your game goes nowhere. So the goal of the field guide, I guess, is to give players interesting things that they can then give to their characters, and work in, so that they're the ones that are driving it. So like, if you have no connection to the world and you don't know anything that's in the world, you can't actually make a decision. Like, it doesn't matter if you go north, south, east, or west if you don't know what's north, south, east, or west. But if you know that there's supposedly like a mythical bird that lives on this island that has feathers made out of gold, well, now you can maybe build it into your character's backstory and say, oh, I'm looking for these
Yeah.
because my grandma is sick and I have to blah 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 blah, right? And that was that was a lot of it.
So the field guide is chock full of so much useful material. I love that you use the end papers and you give the players the map, and then you say, hey, here's what what's rumored to be on some of these hexes. So
Yeah.
players start with information. They can be like, well, what the hell is Crabmouth Lagoon in hex 14? All right, let's go check out hex 14 because I'm interested in that, or the Burning Jungle, or Cloud Falls. You have alphabets in here with transliterations, so that people can, if they encounter things in the adventure, they've got at least they can decode part of the message. And then I love that at the back you have so it's 200 almost 240 pages. The last 4 pages are all of the creatures listed in the book, which I believe is most of the creatures that are actually on the island.
Yeah.
Is it everyone? I didn't actually do I've never done a cross reference.
I think it's everyone except some of the like really big monsters. Like there's an albino ogre. We keep making albino monsters, and I'm like, okay, so we have an albino ogre, there's an albino centipede, we have an albino crocodile. I don't know why I do that, but I just well, I think that if you're in a dark jungle-y place and then this gigantic white crocodile like slinks through in the background like that,
it's going to stand out.
Maximally creepy. Yes. Yeah. So like the big creatures like that we don't have in there, but we do have all of the intelligent creatures in there.
Yeah, and I love that you're like, here are their useful parts. So if you've got a group that's really wanting to do crafting, here's the useful parts. Jack, thanks for subscribing, by the way. Yes, it is. Albino stuff just looks cool. One of the guys in the chat I've played with for a while, he has this adventure story that he loves telling, where the group is going after this white dragon, and he set them up. They bought all their protection against frost potions and all their memorized all their fire spells, and it turned out to be an albino red dragon.
Nice.
And they were screwed, and it's just a wonderful story, Mark. I love that story. So when that happens in our 2e game, you can blame yourself. So you went to Kickstarter with it, and I mean, it was a success. Kind of started the company.
Donnie still doesn't believe it, I think.
It's weird for me to see everything and how people have responded to it. Still meeting people, it's a little surreal for me because I mean, I
Yeah.
grew up playing it like most kids.
Yeah.
You know, you grow up, you playing a thing, and you're like, oh, it'd be cool to make a game. And then, pie in the skies, oh, it'd be cool to, write a game and sell it. That would be neat. And you never think that the thing that you're going to make is going to have an impact like it does.
Yeah.
And to meet all the people that I have, I mean, one of the things that I think I like about it the most is that because we don't offer a specific rule set, so many people from so many different rule
Yeah.
sets have come in and have been able to adapt it.
Mhm.
And I know that people get very much focused into like, I only play this game. And so anything outside of the game I won't touch. But because we've kind of like thrown that off, so many people have been like, I've run it in this system, I run it in that system. I love it. I love playing it, with my, whatever set. And it's some of them I'd never even heard of. I was like, what's the name of that? And I have to write it down and go research it later and
Yeah.
stuff. But I think that has been really the thing to see, just the positive response. Everyone who comes up just kind of like, just, oh, it's so great, and it's just like, cool, like, yeah, it's fine. And it's like, are these guys serious? But
Yeah.
after, I guess, what is it, like 6 or 7 years, have been like, okay,
Mhm.
I think people like our stuff.
Yeah. Was it 2017? Yeah,
Yeah.
2017.
The
Well,
Yeah.
Kickstarter.
do you have so I don't have you have a new edition of it that has a beautiful cover.
Mhm.
Do you have a copy of that you could hold up and show off
I mean, yeah,
on
I have
hand?
There's one behind him.
yeah. Well, this is the minor misprint pile. So I don't know.
Oh,
Let's see. Oh yeah, there's a bend in the cover of this one. But ooh,
Yeah. All
there
right.
we
Like
go.
I love the new. I may have to just buy the new cover because don't get me wrong. I love the embossed cover a lot.
Well, we love the embossed cover too, and the only reason that we don't have the embossed cover still is because the price of the material apparently tripled,
Whoa.
and so we were gonna do, because we're on the third printing right now. That's
Yeah.
the third printing, woo, which is like awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. Now that's the part that I'm still not believing, but yes. Uh, but yeah, so we got to the third printing, and like, so the second printing was a huge pain in the ass because, you know, the salespeople at the printer are like, you got to sign the contract, you got to sign the contract, you got to sign the contract, you got to sign the contract. You're going to have to pay a whole lot of fucking money all at one time. And then it's like, well, are we going to keep selling? Is it going to keep going? I don't even know. And so then it's like, okay, well, let's sign the contract and have the print run done. And then they pass you off to their customer service team. Now you're no longer in the sales silo, you're in the
Yeah.
customer service silo. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, oh my goodness, we don't have any of that black material. Nobody has any of that black material. Nobody knew this. How could this have happened? Oh, but they're making some right now. 6 months later. And then, of course, you're getting fed all the bullshit lines where it's like, oh,
Mm.
well, because they make the roll of plastic in China and then they send it over to Italy where they emboss it with that nice leather grain, blah, blah, blah. And then they ship it back. So it's on a boat somewhere. It's like, whatever. So it delayed the second printing by like 6 months, which was awful. So we were kind of like sold out for a period of time, which really sucked. Um, and so then when we come to the third printing and they're like, oh yeah, like it's gonna cost triple the price to make all your books. And I'm like, why? Like I understand prices fluctuate. And it's like, oh, it's because of the black material. So then it became a terrible thing where it's like, well, what do we do? Do we get a substitute black material and then you're always going to be able to tell? Or do we make a big clean break and say like, okay, there was the before and there was, the after. And so we went with that and we put art on the cover, and it's by this guy Martin Sober, who is from the Czech Republic, I believe, and he's an awesome dude,
Yeah.
and I love his artwork. And yeah,
So that's one of the things that I like. I love about all of your products is that I mean, Gabe's art
yes,
is spectacular. I mean, the
Gabriel's
art
amazing.
quality. These are beautiful books that just also happen to be great reference material for a game. And as you said, like they're fairly system agnostic. Like they have an
Mhm.
old school feel to them, but you
Yeah.
could run this with Savage Worlds or OSE or basically whatever you want. If you want to be inspired and want to have something like fun to put in your game, you got to go check out Swordfish Islands and
Well,
Hot Springs Island. I always get the plurals confused. It's Swordfish Islands at Hot
yes,
Springs Island.
yes,
Yeah.
because it's one of the islands of the Swordfish Islands.
Yeah.
There you go.
Are we getting
But
another one in the future? Is there a plan?
Yeah, so we have an outstanding Kickstarter right now for that. We're doing the small island that is Marlowe's. Well, it's had a few different names. I think originally it was just called Wizard Beer Island, because there was a wizard who makes beer on the island, and it was only 2 hexes. And then we're like, well, because this is what happened too, is that we needed to do the third print run because we were out of the
Mhm.
second one, and again, it's like a lot of money to do the third
Yeah.
print run. So then the stupid idea that I had was, well, let's do a small 48-page book because it's a small island. We'll do that. We'll do it. Yeah, yeah. Shut up, Donnie. Well, because we printed this book Orcs for our friend Mike Evans, and it's nice. It's like a 48-page, like letter size, booklet, and like we did foil stamping on the cover. Like it looks good. It's a nice size, and so I was like, well, let's just do that for Marlowe's because it's a small thing. And then we took it to Kickstarter, and as part of it, it was like, well, you can get Marlowe's, but then you can also get the Hot Springs Island set, and a lot of people who didn't have Hot Springs Island got Hot Springs Island, which was fantastic. And basically that helped pay for the print run, and that helped us move our warehousing because we had been using like a third party fulfillment center, and they no one is going to care about your product like you care about your product, and that was driving me crazy.
100%.
And so yeah, I mean, like when you're sending an entire box of books to the wrong country and it's like hundreds of dollars and then nobody cares, and it's just like, oops, I'm not doing that. But anyway, so our Marlowe's Kickstarter kind of was, we need to do this stuff for the business. And what I should have done is I should have just gone to Kickstarter and said like, hey, we need to do the third printing of Hot Springs Island. Does anybody want to help with that? Instead, I was like, no, we're going to make new content and we're going to make a small little book. And so now everybody's pissed off at me because it's not done yet. Because as we went through this, it was like, so, so one of the problems that we have encountered, so I'm from San Antonio, Texas, like born and
Mm.
raised and everything. And so like it was really cool because PAX South used to be here before COVID killed it. And like I've gone to a number of conventions in San Antonio and Austin that are not explicitly Dungeons and Dragons or RPG conventions, right? So like I went to the Comic-Con in Austin,
Yeah.
and I went to PAX South, and people really liked what we had on the table, and they're like, this is really cool stuff, but I have never played a role-playing game before, ever. And so like I kept hearing that over and over and over again. And one of the things is that also we have like a studio space in San Antonio where like that's where I am right now. That's where I do my work. And this is what we ship out of and everything. And so the studio space is pretty cool because every second Saturday, like it opens up for like an art walk because there's a bunch of studios that are all around here. And again, people come through and they're like, this is really cool. This looks really neat, but like I've never played a role-playing game before ever. And sandboxes and hex crawls are advanced role-playing games. Like that shit's hard. Like you can't just, because it can go in so many
Mm-hmm.
directions, like you've got to you need to have been around for a little while and like run some games. You can't just give that to a totally brand new person and be like, here you go, run Hot Springs Island. It's going to be terrible for them. Um, and of course, part of it too is that I don't like rule systems. I don't care about rule systems. Um, and so I never really wanted to have one. But at the same time, people need to have a complete experience. So it's like, well, okay. So then we've been working on that kind of stuff, which has derailed things. But I think we've gotten to a very good point. We've made basically like a 1 hour adventure. It has been our
Yeah.
goal, like a quick start. So it's like, here, you've never played before. We have a thing. It's called the Maiden's Revenge. Is the name of the ship that then shipwrecks on Marlowe's Mire. And so Donnie, our resident dungeon master, has been running it and playtesting it, and like he's got it down to like 55 minutes, like an hour and 20 minutes, just depending on how engaged people choose to be with the NPCs and stuff. And like I love it. It's gotten really good feedback. So I mean, the new island is coming. It's taking a long time, but I think it's taking a long time because it's becoming what it needs to be.
Yep.
And if people are going to be pissed off about me at me for the timeline, that's fine. I can take it.
You can take it. You were in customer service. Like,
Yeah, I can do it.
right, so I do have to ask, who came up with the decadent elves on Hot Spring Island? Because that feel like I was reading this, going, man, I feel like I remember reading Elric for the first time.
Mhm.
And speaking of, I mean, I said that you guys were local, but Texas is big. I'm in Dallas. You guys are in Austin. I think Michael Moorcock is in Austin now, or at least was for a
Okay.
time. Um, but like reading through Hot Springs Island, I'm like, this feels like the ruins of Melnibone, like with just the last decadent, bloodlines clinging on with their servants and their slaves and their demons.
I've never read Moorcock. I've never read Elric. I really haven't, like legitimately.
That was a big series for me in high school.
Yeah.
Around the same time as I was getting into to fantasy role playing games, I was also getting into fantasy books, and I was reading Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series around the same time. A friend of mine is like, "Hey, have you read the Elric saga?" And he'd always referenced it. And one of the first times I saw it wasn't the book itself, but it was the old Deities and Demigods book that had the Pantheon in there. And I was
Yeah.
just like, what is this? And he goes, oh, it's this book. And he showed me the book. And I was like, well, where can you get that? He's like, you can go to any bookstore. And so I think I went to Crown Books and picked up like the first copy, and I read it, and they're all very short
Mm-hmm.
reads. And so I went through and I read them, and yes, the Dreaming City, that whole thing. And it's I think it was in the back of my head as we talked about it, because yeah, the decadence of him just being on the ruby throne, and just hanging out, having all the servants and stuff, and the way they got into the city, because the way it was all situated, so it was near
Yeah.
impenetrable. And it was always just kind of in the back of my head as the way that these elves would be presented, because it was like these people, it's like, what do you do when you have everything in your board? Well, let's find stuff to do. And
Mhm.
so that I will say for me was a definite influence. I did read it, I did like those books. I lost all of those paperback books, and but I, over the course of 5 years, found like two large volumes of the Elric saga in two separate places. One I found at it was a library sale in Temple, Texas, where it's like
Mhm.
there was the brown bag, where you get the brown bag, and it's like you pay $5 and anything you can fit into the bag is yours. And
Nice.
there was
Yeah.
there was the second part of the
Oh,
series.
awesome.
And so I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And so I put it in the bag. I went around and I had it for years. And then I want to say maybe last year at a Half Price Books, I'm just walking through and there's the first part, and I'm like, yoink.
Yep.
So
Nice.
I had to give it. So I have it again. And so I just started reading through it a little bit ago. And yeah, it's definitely for me. Yes. Yeah.
If you enjoy comics, I think
Mhm.
it's Epic Comics has the first 4 volumes of Elric, and the art is spectacular. And it is,
Nice.
Ooh.
we're talking like Hellraiser style. Like the Melnibonéans are like there's a guy being tortured, and he's like got these spiked bands, and they've separated his joints out, so like he's
Ooh.
like just kind of
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
segments. And I'm like, this
Yeah.
guy
Yeah.
kind of gets it.
Well, I remember I actually had somewhere, I don't know where it is, but I bought Brahms' Darkworks art
Yes.
book. And on the cover, that is Elric with Stormbringer. And I was just like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah. But no, I got it. You said that was Epic
I think
Comics?
it's Epic Comics. I got the first
Okay.
4 trades, and you can get the first 4. They're like hardcover in a slipcase, and
Nice.
Oh, okay.
just wonderful.
I'll have to look for that. Thank you.
You
Thank you
do
for the
need more books,
recommendation.
Donnie.
You-
So do I.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. We all need more books. What is it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Uh, there's actually a word for having more books like on your shelf than you've actually read, and I'm like,
Mhm.
that's my goal. Like I want to,
Let's get there. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, fell in love with Swordfish Islands from the start with Hot Spring Island.
Mm.
Just basically even my new campaign world that we've been playing in for a couple of years, Hot Spring Island is off the coast, and no one has gone there yet. But as soon as they do, like this is on the
Ready.
treasure table. So
Nice.
they may find the field guide and be like, oh well, maybe that's the impetus to kind of head in that direction.
Mhm.
But then you guys came out with Tomb of Black Sand, which I mean, the cover is just amazing. I see the piece of art behind you, Jacob. This is a great, I mean, pretty self-contained, 20 room, I think is what it is, dungeon. And, 48 pages. Tell us about Tomb of Black Sand.
Well, we like self-contained because, like, and that was one of the goals for the Swordfish Islands too, is that everybody's kind of at a stalemate. So, like, if players never engage, it's kind of everybody's sort of at an impasse,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not going to progress any direction. And so that was, um, it was either the first or the second Kickstarter zine quest, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, hey, let's try and make another thing. Like, let's do an experiment and let's make something for 5th edition, because 5th edition is so hot right now. Let's just see how a 5th edition adventure sells. And we'll do a little soft cover, quick little zine. It'll be yeah. But we did write this one very rapidly, I think, for us. And the Kickstarter went really well, and the Kickstarter went well enough that it was like, well, we can increase the page count to 48, and then we can do a hardcover book. And the one cool thing about working with the printers is getting like the samples. Like, I love the
Mm-hmm.
samples. I've got all the in fact, the white notebook that I took down is full of just like fabric samples and crap. And so there had been one that was in there. There had been a Reddit post a long time ago where people were talking about like different ways to do necromantic stuff. And part of the idea, or one of the things that I had talked about was, well, what if it's a bunch of just like ground up like bone fragments that have been charred, so it's like black sand all over the place, and then the lich or whoever can just like raise skeletons from this slurry whenever they want to. That's really cool. And so that was sort of like an idea that was tucked away in the back of my head. And then so part of the self-containment of the Tomb of Black Sand is that ultimately you have a lich who is trying to become a demi-lich, and the Tomb of Black Sand is essentially his ritual to do that. So one of the goals too was to introduce like people who've only played 5th edition. The Tomb of Black Sand was supposed to be a Trojan horse, right? Like, we were supposed to get 5th edition players more interested in old school play, because if you go into the tomb, because it's what, for levels 3 to 5, if you go into the tomb thinking like, oh yes, I'm supposed to go in and kill the bad guy at the end, like, you're gonna have a terrible time. If you walk in, you kick open the door, well, there's a whole lich right there, and he's
Yeah.
just gonna disintegrate you and dimension door you, and like, bye boys, like, it's not gonna be a problem. But it's set up in a way so that if you go in, you can sneak around, you can disrupt the ritual, you can steal a bunch of treasure, you can get out. So if you're playing it in a, I don't know, in a more old school way, I guess, you can completely upend everything, even though you're low level.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the goals, that we had, I think, with that. So, yeah. And then and then that was the thing. Part of the reason too that we went to Kickstarter was because I had seen at that time the fantasy artist Daniel Horn had
Okay.
made a post on Facebook, I think, saying like, oh, like, I'm turning 65, and as I look back on my life, I think that like I just really I want to paint more because that's what I love to do, and so I'm really trying to do that more, blah 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 blah. So I saw that post, and then I slid into his DMs and was like, so does that mean you're available for commissions right now?
Yeah.
Because like, I love what you do. Do you want to paint something for us? And so we were able to do that. So like, a big thing for the Kickstarter was like, we want to hire Daniel Horn to make a painting so that we can use it as a cover. Because like, that's what we want to do. Oh, and the fabric sample thing that I got distracted by is that there was this fabric sample that
No,
kind of looked like glittery black
it's
sand, and I was like,
it's glittery black sand. I don't think you can see it. It's got a good
yeah,
texture to it.
yeah.
That's another thing. Like, it's a weird thing to say about your products, but I love the feel of your products.
See, Wizards of the Coast could be doing this too with their stuff. They're just choosing not to.
Yeah.
Like, they're actively making a choice to have glued bindings and cheap printing. And I mean, good for them. They don't have to. They could do it differently.
Yeah.
But they're not interested in doing that. So I am interested in doing that.
My second edition books that I've had, or I've had for decades or picked up,
yeah,
their spines are still completely solid. My 5th edition books that I have down here, I've gone through 3 or 4 copies of because they snap and they break and pages fall out. And
But see, that's how you can't. There is a deeply there is a deep problem with durable goods, right? For as a company, because like if I make Hot Springs Island and I sell Hot Springs Island for, so it's like 60 for the big book and it's 40 for the small book, that's $100. Oh my God, that's really expensive. Yeah, that's really expensive until it's like, okay, but there are 8 people that are playing the game. And then there's a group from Boston that literally played every weekend for like 3 years on Hot Springs Island. So that's a phenomenal value for the amount of money, but they only paid us one time, right? Well, I mean, some of them have come and like they bought field guides and stuff, and they're amazing people, and I love them, and I cannot believe that people have played the game for that long. But still, like from the business side of things, it's like that's only a one-time payment. Cool. So well, why haven't you hired a customer service person to answer the forum posts or the emails that you've sent? Why don't you have somebody that's helping you pack books or pack boxes? Because ultimately, like it's a small thing. So a better choice is to make shitty books that fall apart so that then people have to buy them again. It's a consumable, right?
Right, it becomes
Like
a
we're over here.
consumable as opposed
Yeah.
to a like a something to invest in.
Yeah, if it lasts, you're actually hurting your company if you're making niche things. So Donnie and I have been talking about starting something called Cash Grab Coffee, where we just sell like a coffee subscription. But the problem is neither one of us like really drink coffee, so like we don't know what to sell. You know, like that's oh well, pie in the sky.
Tinker Hellraiser just said it's not just a durability thing though. There's a lack of artisanship and beauty that's pretty glaring when you put books like yours side by side.
Sure. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, you've got to like they do have good art, but also, you know, we take a really long time, and that's our fault, and that bites us in the ass. But from a business perspective, right? Like it would be better if we were faster and we said like, hey, get this out. Here's the deadline. You have to do it right now. But you know, so like we found somebody who I really like his artwork, and he's making like he's doing essentially like background art, I guess, for each of the locations on Marlowe's Mire.
Okay.
Right. And like, you know, he started working in December on them, and he knocked out like there's 12 locations on Marlowe's Mire. And so he knocked out like 6 of them like super fast. And then life stuff started happening because he's not a full-time artist, and he's got kids and he's got a job. And so then things slowed down a lot. And if I was, you know, Watsy or somebody, I would still probably be paying the same amount of money, but then I would be like, you're gone. I'm going to replace you with somebody else. Whereas I'm like, no, dude, like keep going.
Yeah.
Like I love it. I want the set. Like, let's go. And so, you know, that's just
one of the
a
artists
different
I'm working
choice.
with on a Kickstarter just was in a car accident, and they're like, listen,
Yes.
I just can't even get I can't focus on drawing right now. I'm like, that's fine. Like I want your art in this book. I'm willing to give it the time
It'll be done when it's done.
Right. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So I also have to show this off. This is
Okay.
another thing of yours that I have picked up. And I know everybody in the chat, except for maybe 1 or 2 people, is a dungeon master or a game master or storyteller or whatever. There's just too many titles. You're the guy guy or gal running the game. This is your World Builder's Journal, your
World Builder's Notebook, technically.
It's fantastic. World Builder's Notebook. It's got great art on the end, and it's basically a way to catalog your notes and organize them. I love that it's got, you know, chapter breakouts that may not, you know, for however you want to do it. It's dotted as opposed to line, which is my preferred, you know, format for a journal. You've got hex maps in here. What was the impetus behind this, and how is it doing for you guys? Because I mean, we've bought several of these.
Yeah. No, it's good. We're actually getting very close to the point of doing a reprint, and so it's been trying to figure out how to work that out and what to do. For that one, I do like it, but I want to change the cloth that's on the cover. So I want to like make some changes like that.
Okay.
But we're not quite there yet. But I mean, a lot of that, it was what is something what is something really quick, there's a pattern, there's a theme here.
There's a theme here.
What is something really quick that I can do, you know, while we're working towards the next book or whatever we're doing, right? And so the World Builder's Notebook was that. And part of it was, again, I was just trying to solve my own problems, because it's like, if I get a journal, I don't want to write in it like out of order. I want to be able to find my stuff. I have a hard time being able to find my stuff. You know, I want to try and keep like things together. And so then I end up like being so stupid about writing in a journal that then I just don't do it. And so the goal of the World Builder's Notebook is to make it easy to like write in it so that you can find your stuff and then ideally like run your game from your notebook.
Yeah.
Because so one of the things is that all of the pages have numbers. So if you write up the witches on page 57, you can find the witches on page 57.
And you can
at
go
the
back
front,
to, you can put at the
there's
front,
a
witches,
there's a table
page
of
57.
contents. Yes, and you can organize it however you want to. And then it has all those little boxes on the table of contents, and all the little boxes on the sides of each page are supposed to be like a built-in tabbing system. So you can color code your notes. So if you're writing 2 different adventures, because, you know, I mean, I'm sure it's not just me, but like
No,
I
we all
can't
are.
work on only one thing at a time. Like I'm going to work on this, and then I'm going to have an idea for that, and then I'm going to have an idea for that. So it can be like idea number 1 is colored red, and like I color in the top tab of everything red. And that could be all of like the NPCs or whatever. And then maybe the second tab colored red is all of the locations or treasure or whatever. And then you can use different colors in the tabbing system to then be able to find stuff. And so if you use the table of contents as like columns, so it's like column number 1 is like the red idea and column number 2 is the blue idea, then you can find your stuff, because that becomes a big problem. Like I love writing on paper because I really do believe that it helps me remember stuff better.
100%.
I mean, yeah. So like I like to do that. So I want to write it down, but then if I write it down in just like a regular blank page notebook, I can't find anything, and then it becomes like oh, I hate this, right? And then I just stop. So the goal was to fix that. And the goal was also, so like there's a little offline section in the back that has some Dyson Logos maps in it, and it's got some information about landforms and biomes and probability. The idea being that you can ideally like unplug and go right, so then you know you don't fall down an internet rabbit hole being like, oh hey, so what is that? Is it a gulf? Is it a cove? Is it a bay? What's the difference? What's the difference between a swamp and a marsh?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then next thing you know, it's 3 hours later and you're watching like tornado videos on YouTube, or that could just be me. So this was to try and stop that, so that it's like, all right, I'm going to go to the library, or I'm going to go someplace, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to write, and I'm just going to write. And yeah.
Awesome. Donnie, anything to add? I apologize. I feel like...
No, it's no, I Jacob is more accustomed to the interviews than I am.
Awesome.
So
Well, thanks
so
for...
he's got his answers ready to go. But to go back to the Tomb of Black Sand, Daniel Horn was a very big deal for me personally. Growing up, looking in the different handbooks and the different Dragon magazine covers that he had done, having him do the cover for one of the books that I helped create is like it's kind of like one of those like achievement unlocked type things where it's, you know,
Donnie
like,
was literally stunned.
Yeah,
like Daniel Horn. He was like, wait, like that Daniel Horn?
Like,
I was
like
yes.
Daniel Horn.
Yeah.
And so like, because when he said it, I was like, no, he can't mean that Daniel Horn. And then like I was like, no, and he's like, no, yeah, that's him. And I was just, at first I'm just like, you know, I could feel my heart beating real fast. I'm like, wait a minute, like I love that cover. I love the
it's
cover.
gorgeous.
The tomb is one of the things that we did come up with pretty rapidly as far as we are concerned with writing. And one of the things that I actually am proud of is the inside of the book. There is what Jacob titled a cold start.
The cold start. Yeah, the cold start.
The cold start is, there was a problem during playtesting that I guess certain people would run the game like, I'm having difficulty getting them to the tomb, into the dungeon. Like, how do I do that? And this is the night before I am getting ready to playtest at Gen Con, because we were playtesting there. And the idea that I had was, well, what if they start in the tomb? and they have to get out. Like they're already there. And so, and then so Jacob's asking me questions, and I'm trying to answer the questions as I'm writing out this quick, just quick start. And then the next day when I ran it, I had, I think, like 5 or 6 players there, and they had a great time. And like in the allotted time, they had just gotten like to the end, and they were almost there. We didn't finish because people had to like go do other things, but it was a lot of fun. And I think that also is a way to keep things fresh. Have a different way for people to get to the thing. Well, what if they start in there and then they have to get out? Well, that's a whole new set of problems that they have to work through.
I love the
And
cold start where they're all ritualistic victims. Like
yes,
they're set up to be
yes.
sacrificial victims. I'm like, that's a DCC funnel right there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that could definitely be used as a funnel. 0 level adventures. Yeah, everybody's just, all right, you've got 4 players, go. Let's see who lives. And
I don't remember if we explicitly called this out in there, but the way that Donnie ran it, I mean, because again, Donnie's the game master. Donnie's the one that comes up with like 90% of the characters, like all the NPCs. Like thank Donnie. But like one of the things that he did is that you wake up as one of the ritual victims, you go down into the pit, and like there's all kinds of like gear and stuff there. And so if somebody's like, oh, there's a sword, I'm going to pick up the sword, then Donnie was like, here is your fighter character sheet. Oh, I pick up the staff. Oh yeah, here is your mage character sheet. Or whatever, which I thought was just wonderful.
Yeah,
like,
that's
such a
great.
good way to do that, because you wake up, you have amnesia, you don't know who you are, you don't know where you are, you're just wrapped in some shroud, like on a the niche in the wall. Like obviously this is a bad place to be. So works out great.
That's
That was
awesome.
all
yeah.
done. A
And
lot of my struggle is just trying to like extract from Donnie how he actually runs the games. Because at a lot of the conventions, like I'm stuck at the booth, Donnie's off running the game, and then he comes back and gives me a report, and it's great. But then other people are like, "Oh yeah, and he did this, and he did this, and he did this," and I'm like, "What are you doing over there?" Because it's so cool, and I like we need to put you in the book, Donnie.
Yeah, we can't
give it
ship
to
you
us.
with
Right,
every
right.
purchase. So
Get a free Donnie Garcia with every purchase. Yes.
it's something that I think the reason why that happens is because there is the one iteration of the way things can go. And anytime you're in a game group, anytime you are playing with people, I have run some of these adventures probably 10 to 15 times, but like though the end is the same and the beginning is the same, everything that happens in the middle is so different. And there's so many different approaches to solving problems. And one of the things I've kind of stopped doing is giving the PCs a way to solve a problem. Like, here's the problem, you guys come up with it. And I'm always surprised by how
it's not my job to come up with solutions. My job as the GM is only to come up with problems.
Exactly. Yeah. I am the problem starter, not the problem solver.
Yep.
And so I'm never unimpressed with what people come up with. And so so when I'm telling Jacob all this stuff, he's like, why isn't the book? I'm like, well, that's not how I would have done it as a player. So I can only give you my one perspective. But I think that's why for us playtesting has been so important, because we've been able to have so many different approaches and so many ways the players have come up with stuff. Is it gets into the book. And so there are a number of things that have happened with the recent playtests for our new content that are coming out that are going to be in the book, only because I've had players in games do things that I either found super interesting or just completely hilarious. That I feel like it needs to be in the book. And so Tomb was that way with them, just like going through and then like, okay, well, what happens if I just give them the character sheet? Oh my gosh, I'm a bard. Like, why am I in here? Or just like I'm so useless. But no, you'll be fine. Just just survive. And
awesome.
And so that's been really cool with Tomb. But with the World Builder's Notebook, that one has just been I look at it and I'm kind of the same way with like I don't want to write in a journal, but I also discovered Post-it notes. So the inside of my journal is usually like covered in Post-it notes with just like scribblings and notes, and then I'll have to write in numbers on places like, or I'll just write in like goblins and then I'll have it like in the upper or the lower hand corner. But with the World Bros Notebook, because everything is numbered, all the pages are numbered, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
So it takes away a lot of that like extra work you have to do to try and find the thing that it is that you're working on. And yeah, land formations have been huge for me because I'm like, what does this look
Yeah,
like?
no, the offline material at the back was
Yeah.
a great addition to that.
Yeah. It's just so key because as a dungeon master, you're trying to come up with stuff and it's like, what's another word for long hair? And then you see it and you're like, oh, cascading locks. Okay. And then
There we go.
that down. And so, and that, but it's so evocative because it gives the player such a more
Yeah.
vivid description when you're telling them, like, instead of somebody with long straight hair, oh, cascading auburn locks. It's like, oh, I know what that looks like. And so it's never a problem.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why I feel like if you are somebody who does design games, if you are somebody who does like have an idea about certain things, you could just use that, jot it down, keep it in there, then you can always go back to it later. And yeah, some days you just don't want to go down that rabbit hole of like, oh, this is how boars, search for truffles, or this is, how, this is how birds like to, like drop rocks on things, to distract people. It's just, it's one of those things. And so you're able to kind of stay focused, keep writing. And then, and yeah, just for me also writing stuff down by hand has helped me just remember so much more, with like things I do, especially with, I always try to do that with my post game notes at conventions, because Jacob always wants to know, like, how did it go? Like, what happened? Because as I'm telling him, it's giving him ideas on how we need to add things or maybe take things away. And the quick start play test that we came up with, I mean, I've done probably 30 play tests just to try and get that to where it is. And the first way, like the first idea of it is so much different from what it's become.
It's iterative.
The first idea of it was very much like the very first RPG that you played, because you had to do a skill check to climb a column. And so the initial way that it started was like, you guys have to do a skill check to get off a sinking ship. And I'm like, now that I know that, I will never forget that about your first game. I was like, Donnie, this isn't your first game. We got
Yeah, I know. And the skill checks, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I can have you roll, but then it's like, I mean, is it just a series of rolls then? Then what?
Right. Where's the fun? Where's the story in that?
Exactly.
Also, but also the whole, if you guys fail, then what happens?
Yeah.
You just say, oh, everybody drowned. Thanks for playing in the 5-minute game. We'll see you later.
That's
like,
right.
No,
thanks, guys. Yeah, and then just leave. Yeah, that's fun for nobody. And so so having the people, have being able to explore and look and interact with things has been the way even I do certain descriptions completely changes how an encounter will go. Because the last convention, the convention that we met at, North Texas, in a couple of the play tests, I had mentioned one of the NPCs having a knife on their hip, and every party that I mentioned that to, the first thing they wanted to do was disarm him. And so they reached over to grab the knife, and they all failed the rolls. So it's him grabbing their hand as they're trying to disarm him, and him, taking the hat off of his face because he's asleep and looking right at them. And, but anytime I didn't mention it, they had no problem. They would just go and like talk to him. And so just that one thing completely
changes the way the players interact with it.
Absolutely.
Well, because the hardest thing, I think, is that like when you're writing or when you're making a game or something like that, you have all of these assumptions that are in your head, and if those assumptions don't make it down onto the paper, then it's not gonna fly. Like one of the things with the captain, like we have this setup on the adventure basically where it's like, okay, so like you guys are on the ship and you overhear the captain and the first mate talking about this delivery that has to happen, whatever. And then, the shipwreck occurs, everybody wakes up on the beach, the captain is gone, this chest is gone, the first mate is found face down in the sand, dead, his throat's been cut, there's no sign of a struggle.
Oh no.
Oh, did we lose Jacob?
I don't know. Oh no.
Oh no, Jacob.
At the worst point.
That's the worst part of the story. What happens
Uh,
next?
I tune in next week, guys.
That's right.
We'll continue now. No, you find the first mate's throat cut, and then you see the drag marks, and so what is the assumption most players make? Well, somebody killed the first mate, but
Yeah.
who? And I think for Jacob, his assumption was never like the captain, but it could have been somebody else.
Yeah, a mutiny or
And
something.
I intentionally keep it vague
Yeah.
because I let the players come to their own conclusions, and that has um
Let me reorganize this real quick.
oh yeah.
I'm sure he'll be back.
Okay.
I have faith.
I'll text him, Jacob, where are you?
Well, at least for now, Donnie, thanks for coming on, and
Yeah.
Jacob as well. If you can hear this, Jacob, in wherever you may be at,
Uh-huh.
let me get you on the screen for while we say, while we do a sign off here.
Okay.
Apologies, everyone. Technical gremlins
Oh no.
are a real thing. Here, let's do this. That should. There we go. I got you back on the screen.
Okay.
Thank you so much for jumping on and joining us. I'm putting the link to Swordfish Island down here in the chat. It'll be in the show notes. If you liked what you saw and what you've heard of, please, please, please go support Donnie and Jacob and Gabe. And I don't want to leave the is it Evan?
Yes.
And Evan. And we'll, this is an infrequent show that I do behind or beyond the table, but we'll be back with more interviews like this, because these are projects and people and companies that I think are worthy of supporting and worthy of getting the name out for. So, I think we just got Jacob back. Haha! Welcome back, Jacob.
Oh. I think we're waiting for audio. Oh, wait. Jacob?
I'm back.
Okay.
I think. We'll see.
Well, we were just doing a sign off.
Oh, cool. I figured. I was like, I feel like we're wrapping up, so it's okay. I was messaging Donnie, but I was like, I feel like I got to the end of my point anyway, so it's all good.
I was just saying thank you so much for hanging out, for talking with me on this, and again for putting out great and beautiful products. I was just telling everybody, if this is a show that I do because, one, I want to record the history of people and products that I find interesting and worthy of signal boosting, if that makes sense. And I'm just so glad that we ran into each other at North Texas, and yeah,
rock on. Thanks again for having us. Really appreciate it.
Seriously, my pleasure. I don't know when we'll be back, but I'm currently talking with several other people about coming on Beyond the Table, including Sandy Peterson and a couple of other people. So I'm looking forward to doing more of these interviews. But until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I am JM. This has been Beyond the Table, and I will catch you guys later. Until then, have a good one.